While inside the cave, All For One begins to say that lies don't work against him, since years ago he stole a peculiar quirk from a man that lets him know when someone is lying to him. One of the descendants of that man, who was a victim of All For One, currently works with All Might. Then All For One receives a phone call from Aoyama's mother, who tells him that her son can deliver the Macallan he is requesting the next day. And once the call ends, All For One realizes that there were no lies. On the other hand, Deku, who is holding a cell phone, goes to look for Aoyama, who, once he sees him, thanks him for visiting him. At that moment, Deku is a little confused, since he thought that Aoyama was in prison. So, Aoyama explains to Deku how he got out of jail. And once everything is clear, Deku turns around and tries to find his other classmates to tell them the news. However, Aoyama stops him and asks if he wants to know what All For One's real plan is. In this way, Aoyama tells Deku that, once Japan is in ruins, the value of its national currency will be devalued, and not only that, but many companies will go bankrupt. Added to all that, there will be a great social instability that will cause the increase of the villains. And in such a scenario, the other countries will focus on themselves and will no longer help Japan. And once all of that happens, All For One will be able to supply them with plenty of resources using their quirks. Hearing all of that, Deku tells her that it's too early to state such a doomsday scenario, since everyone will stop All For One. At that moment, Aoyama apologizes to Deku and tells him, through tears, that he still wants to continue protecting his parents from him. Seconds later, All For One appears behind him and congratulates him on his actions. Then All For One asks Aoyama if it was his parents who told him about his plan, to which he says yes, and that they also promised him that they would be happy in the world that All For One will create. Faced with such a situation, Deku is shocked and then yells at Aoyama, telling him that he trusted him. Suddenly, however, Aoyama, who is crying and shaking, quickly turns around and fires a laser at All For One. Quickly, All For One uses an air wave and dodges the attack. He then tells Aoyama that he is a fool. Seconds later, Deku tells Aoyama that his performance was very realistic, to which he replies that it was the only way to fool All For One. Now Aoyama, who is still shaking, yells at All For One, telling him that he will face him and he will protect the parents from him. And seeing Aoyama act like that, All For One is confused, because when he talked to Aoyama's mom, he couldn't tell that there were lies in his words. Then All For One stops looking for an explanation for what is happening and focuses on the fact that he is leading one for all. Then he takes off his jacket and prepares to fight. At that instant, many villains begin to appear. And when everything seems lost, a small portal appears, where many heroes begin to emerge. Now a great battle between heroes and villains will begin.